Okay. Well, hello, my friends. I know I've been MIA, but I had to take a break because I was working on some other things and I didn't want to do both because I like to do my best whenever I do something. But tonight, I'm here and I'm here with one of your favorite people. He's not a stranger to my show. He is a researcher amongst the many things. And lately, he has been my go-to person for my news because I know I can trust what he is reporting because it's well researched. I'm sure all of you feel like I do, that we can't necessarily trust mainstream media for reporting the news, but versions of the news. However, Erik, he tells the good, the bad, and the ugly as it happens. And in my opinion, that's how news is supposed to be. You tell what has happened, not tailored versions of it, which is why I feel very blessed to have him on the show tonight to bring us up to date on what's been happening. And since this is sort of an impromptu show, I will just let Erik take the lead. Erik, welcome back.
Well, hello, Jennylyn world. I've missed you all.
Well, we've missed you too, Erik. And so tonight I thought, there is so much going on in the world. And if you're following Erik, which I really encourage you to do, he has a show on YouTube and he's on TikTok, and his show is called The Expendable Show. And the reason I would encourage you to watch him is I can put my head on a block for what he's telling you. That's how sure I am he's reporting facts. And so tonight, Erik, I'm going to let you start with the most current affair that you're up to date on.
Well, so I'll start off with, the tariffs is kind of a big thing, and I've been paying close attention to it because it affects me in my day-to-day world. Um, so especially with with our contacts over there in India, I was just on the Republic last night talking about Trump's tariffs because they're going through some sanctioning right now where they had a 25% tariff and Trump doubled it because of their involvement with the Russian oil market. Um, I'm kind of bent two ways with that a little bit. So it was hard for me uh, to really pick a side there because I understand India's position when it comes to oil. Russia has a cheaper oil market. Russia is part of the BRICS nations with India, so there's a partnership there that they have to acknowledge. Um, Also, India needs oil for all kinds of things. India is big in the textile industry. India is big in the plastics industry. India is big in a lot of oil-based industries. So for them to have an oil outlet is going to be important to their economy. And economic wise, I understand their position. However, I look on the other side of the fence and I'm looking at what President Trump is trying to do with Russia, and I understand his side of the fence. He wants to choke out their economy, and in order to do that, he needs his international partnerships to work together to cut Russia off from gaining too much funding. Where that's important, just as we just saw yesterday, where Russia's drones have crossed into NATO airspace. Whether it was on purpose or not, we're not real sure yet, but it did happen. It went over Lithuania. So this is something that we're paying attention to. Romania has activated their air force to start patrolling their border. Everybody's getting kind of edgy over there. So I do think that when it comes to Russia, it would be nice if we could get that situation under control, get Russia to back off and go back into their home country, and work towards, whatever economic goals they have. But they need to get that settled. And it sounds like President Trump and President Putin are going to have a sit down here pretty soon, and I'm going to be paying close attention to that. And hopefully we can get some kind of resolution there, where and when you look at the mainstream media, they're not even really covering that war anymore. So it's one of those things where you're like, is that even happening anymore? Nobody really knows because nobody's covering it anymore.
Which is why I wanted to bring you on, because what I've noticed from the alternative sources that I seek out my news from is what they're reporting and what you're seeing on the tube that most of America is consuming are not even in sync. The news the mainstream is reporting is definitely supporting mainstream agenda.
Right.
And a lot of the really hot topics people are oblivious to unless they go like we do and research it elsewhere.
Right.
There are many who believe that there's so many news sources, and how do you know who to trust and where to really get the news and get the facts? Because there are several versions of it out there at people's fingertips. And I believe this is a deliberate attempt to keep people confused and away from the
Right.
truth, which is why I would encourage people to find someone that they have vetted and they know is doing the research like you, Erik, so that when you are sharing the news, they can trust what you're saying.
Right.
So this whole incident that you just talked about, or the most recent update you just gave us with the tariffs and Putin and Trump, I saw a news report somewhere the other day where it sounded like Putin was ready to cut Trump's head off. And now you're saying they're going to sit down and talk. So this is the
Yeah.
problem with the news.
So and when you look at stuff like that, it just depends on what the news outlet is. Unfortunately, you can't get a consistent story from anybody.
Exactly.
So what I do, like we've talked on the show in the past, is I look at all of the news outlets across the globe. The major news outlets. So I saw on Russia Today where President Putin is committing to meeting with President Trump, and then I saw on our side where like Newsmax and Fox News is saying President Trump is going to meet with President Putin. So I would be willing to think that, those news outlets who are Russia Today is very pro Putin and Fox News and Newsmax are very pro Trump, that information is going to be pretty accurate where they probably have been having talks. And I know that Steve Wyckoff, he's been already talking with Russia to try to get some kind of situation, kind of mapped out for that. So that these are all things that are they're happening. It's just you have to remember that the news outlets have an agenda, and it's not supposed to be like that. I run into people all the time, and that are in the journalism world, and I'm like, man, I remember when I was a kid, I could watch ABC nightly news, or I could watch Dateline, or I could watch CNN and get a pretty good rendition of what was going on. Now you can't do that. And it's even like that with Fox News. They have their agenda. They hyper focus on certain things. And that's where people get confused because what I always tell people, you got to think, you have this major complex news article or news story, and they have to compress it into like 60 seconds. So how much information do you think is going to be left out in 60 seconds? A lot. There's a lot of information that's going to get left out. We live in 60-second frames of information when we watch the news. So we have to remember that generally there's more to the story, and they hyper summarize the news to fit. Obviously they're going to make it fit the narrative they want, and then they're going to exclude the stuff that's not narrative friendly. So that's just kind of how they do it. Everything's edited and cropped and clipped. So it's important that we understand that as a society that our news is heavily broken, and I'm not sure how you fix it. Do you reclassify news and say this is no longer news? Because you don't really see them like covering news stories. It's just disaster manipulation. That's what it basically has come down to, disaster manipulation stories. And that it's unfortunate that that's what it is, and um, everything's a psyop on TV, and you just like it's probably contributing to everyone's mental health issues, I would
I'm
say.
sure. I'm sure. And if you follow my show, you will remember not so long ago I shared my Russian friend Sergey,
Right.
who I met in the San Francisco Silicon Valley and became friends for many years. And he was leaving the United States after over 20 years to return to Russia. I just want to share this quickly. Most recently, we had a really nice conversation. And he said to me, I go, so how are you feeling? Are you having return remorse? Are you ready to pack up your bags and come back to the US? And his answer was, hell no. When I left Russia and I came to United States, the United States today was Russia. Now I've come back to Russia. Russia is what the United States was when I arrived over
Wow.
20 years ago. He goes, there's no way I would want to leave here. Our country and our economy in Russia is doing way better than any part of the US. And that really made me sad. How do you feel about that, Erik?
I mean, I've done a lot of research on that because obviously our media here wants to paint Russia as this war-torn dictatorship where everyone's poor and all this, it's rags,
Exactly.
everybody's in rags. But when you like, I follow several American TikTokers that are in Russia. They live there permanently now, and they walk around Russia and they go, look, you notice something? There's no homeless people. You notice something else? There's no trash in the streets. Like it's everywhere that this guy goes, it's beautiful. And there's law enforcement presence. You see them. So he said, it's safe here. Like we do not have crime. And and then he showed it the grocery store. He said, look, eggs are 75 cents for a dozen. Look, bread is this, and my apartment is $300 a month. Like their cost of living is very low, and and
And this
it's
is in
very affordable.
Moscow. And this is in Moscow. It's not in a
Right. Yeah,
small
this is a city.
community. Yeah. And
Right.
they have
Imagine.
health care for everyone. I mean, seriously, something has really gone wrong here in the US. Well, a lot of things
Right. I mean, and Russia does have their wealth. They have a lot of billionaires. There's a lot of money in Russia, um, but it's not as bad as what our media paints it out to be.
have. Hmm.
They actually have a very stable way of living there. They don't have a bunch of crime. It's when Brittany Griner went over there with a little bit of THC in her vape pen. They had zero tolerance for that, and that's what I want to see. Like you don't hear that Russia's full of junkies. You don't hear that, and because they have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to drugs, and I think that that's something that I think a lot of people in the world need to adopt. We have a massive drug problem here, and we went through the opioid epidemic not too long ago, and people have not recovered from that. We have serious drug problems here in the United States. And as much as I like shutting the border down, it prevents the flow, but it's not going to stop every drug problem. So we still need to find ways to eliminate the drug problem, and part of that is big pharma is the feeding ground. So that's part of the equation, and it's do we attack the people that pay our politicians and shut them down? I'd like to, but realistically, that's going to be a very hard task to accomplish.
And, he pointed out, and others have pointed out, we have a very dark side to our political um, governing body, and I don't know which side it's on or where it is, but the fact that so many innocent children are being converted to the opposite sex, that was one of the things that really bothered Sergey. And he said he didn't want his children going to school here because he didn't he wants if they're born a
Right.
boy to be a boy or a girl to be a girl and not be encouraged by anyone to change that. And so
Right.
I think all of these things have added up to where we are today. Um, Apart from the terrorists, Erik, What do you think that Americans need to be aware of now that you have just covered in your research?
So things we need to be aware of, just that when we're looking, so there's a if you've been paying attention to the news, and I know a lot of people do, some people don't, but we're about to see some of the biggest indictments in American history pretty soon. And I think a lot of Americans need to mentally prepare for that before it turns into a giant disaster. Now, Pam Bondi has, and I'm 50-50 on Pam Bondi. There's days I want to throw her out the window, and there's days that I'm like, okay, at least she's doing something today. So, but with Pam Bondi, she has been taking her very, very slow time on building these cases up, especially with the Russia collusion, the Steele dossier. That's going to be the first one to go. When that happens, you're going to see people that you never thought you would ever see indicted, and that's going to cause a lot of shock. And I think that's something that we need to prepare. Uh, those types of things in this country, as we've known for years now that they fabricated it, we can't just let that stuff slide. We can't just let these higher ups, get away with things. And it's no different left or right. If you're committing crimes in office, you're done. Period. There's no
But Erik, I don't mean to interrupt, but historically,
good.
you know what you're saying isn't true. When have you seen a politician or anybody who's considered in the upper, what they call echelon? When have you ever seen them being held responsible for offenses that they have committed? Because they do as well, they're humans. And this
Right,
is the one complaint you hear from Americans constantly. There are a different set of laws for those people than there is
right,
for us. Like if your son or you or I are, if we're caught with drugs or something really petty, there are people in jail rotting for years for simple crimes like that. And then
right,
we know of other heinous crimes that people in the upper echelon commit. And then we watch them go through the legal system, which for me I find amusing, and they end up walking or with some light sentence that doesn't really affect them very much.
right. Yeah, I agree with you, Jenny Lynn. It does seem that way. And when you do see cases that come out, generally it's not the upper echelon people. They keep a scapegoat around, and that's always the person that goes down.
Right.
And yeah, so that's their way of saying we'll throw a sacrificial lamb out there. Go ahead and prosecute them, but let's call it case closed after that. And that type of behavior needs to stop, because all we're doing is we're enabling upper echelon criminals to be bigger upper echelon criminals. And then we end up in the situation that we're in right now, where you can throw a stone and hit a corrupt politician now. And that's where we the fabric of our society is failing here in the United States, because our politicians are so corrupt, they're so owned by special interest groups, that we can't trust our lawmakers anymore. We can't trust, we have trust issues in the presidency now. We have trust issues in the FBI. These types of things are not going to get any better until somebody actually does put their foot down and say, look, let's start this process. Let's go after some big dogs and see how America reacts to it, and continue based upon that reaction. If they want to see these people go down, let's take them down. But there's a lot more moving parts involved than just throwing out some indictments, because you have global instability that could be involved. There's there you know the, Just like with the Epstein stuff, you have royalty in the British monarchy that's involved in that. So it becomes international sometimes, because a lot of the power brokers in the world get involved with American financial systems and American politics. And so you end up with a giant web of everybody goes down at the end. So that's what they try to navigate around. And at the end of the day, everybody links into each other so tight that nobody goes down. They
So
don't want
the
to expose each other's dirt.
so the way I look at it is if you have a tree and the root is poisonous, you can keep trimming the leaves and you will
Right.
never fix the problem because
Correct.
at the root, that's where the corruption lies. And here is the message that it sends to Americans, to me personally, and I've spoken with others who share my views on this, is they do this and they know that somebody is going to pardon them. It's like that part, all the pardons that were issued by the previous president, and now we're finding out that what pen, what they
The
call
auto pen.
the auto pen. I mean, it's like a big joke. How are we ever going to move forward when what we appear to be doing is shuffling the corruption from one hand
Right.
to the next hand, and it's being done what they probably think nonchalantly and
Right.
underhandedly. But the majority of Americans like us, we are not idiots. And for me, it almost makes me feel like they are saying to us, you're stupid, shut up, this is how it is. Even though you see that's not true, accept it because we are in charge and we are telling you this is how it is.
Right. Yeah, and you're exactly right. And it's not going to get fixed until somebody really says, "Look, I don't care what anybody says. People got to go down." And that's going to be a shot in the dark. They're talking a big game right now in Washington, so now they're going to be held accountable if they don't deliver. The MAGA people are very, very forceful when they don't get the president's promises. So we'll see how this all plays out. There's a lot of pressure on Pam Bondi to start delivering. I myself, I've been guilty of it too because I know what Donald Trump said he was going to do, and Pam Bondi seems to want to dance around it. And at first you'd see her on TV every day saying, "Well, we caught this group of illegal immigrants. We caught this group of immigrants." Okay, that's great and everything. That's what you campaigned on it. You got all these felons out of the country. However, when are you going to go after the big cases? Because I don't need the attorney general on TV talking about illegal immigrants. I need her on TV talking about major, major, major crime. So go after the major crime. You got Tom Homan to deal with the immigration problem. Let him be on TV and talk about it. So that's kind of how I felt about him. Like, you have your Pam Bondi has an attorney general job. She's in charge of all these major investigations, but she's hyper focusing on the immigration issue. I don't really need her to do that. I need her to do big time things.
Not so long ago, a text either leaked or he deliberately put it out there, but Don Bongino made, put out a text that, and I can't repeat verbatim what it said because it's been a while ago, but something to the effect of he would never be the same again after what he had just seen or what he had just discovered. And so nobody knows exactly what he is saying
Right.
because it's quite ambiguous. But Erik, you are very much involved in the news and on the news platform. And it is my wish that somebody will start a TV station and put you at the next, because I think there's hope for Americans to get the truth then. But
Hey, they'll just do
every
me like they did Alex Jones.
Right. Well, listen, I believe that when you are doing good, the universe will eventually set you up in the right place at the right time. So just keep doing what you're doing because you're helping those of us who follow you. But I have to
Right.
address this, and I don't know how much of it you know. Where I go for my news source, you are on that platform and you're one of my news sources, as I've said many times. Every day, thousands of children and humans are being rescued that were being trafficked or
Right.
that were being detained for heinous purposes. Why don't we see any of it reported on the mainstream? And
Uh,
I have to add,
so
it has been rumored, or I've read several places where the United States has been accused of being the largest human trafficking organizations in the world. What do you know about this?
right. So it's very complex. So as you know, Jenny Lynn, I've been digging very, very deep into the fabric of Kentucky. So I have found a lot of truth that comes in that world. It's it's so much the United States, we have a serious problem. And I don't know if I'm sure everybody knows about it. Like I have an FBI contact that I talk to, and she likes to tell me to just shut up and get out of the way all the time. And I never listen because I have a listening problem. But
Probably because
um,
she doesn't want you to get killed.
I mean, she knows. And same thing. I have a Homeland Security contact as well, and she tells me when the FBI gets out there, you better get out of the way. I'm like, pish posh. But but so it's way more complicated than what people think. These are not just for the most part, these are not individually ran cells of trafficking rings. It's way more complex than that. There's a maneuvering around. So they use several different ways to do this. What I found is they use treatment facilities, people that are strung out on drugs. They use those facilities to siphon out the candidates, and then they throw them out on the street, still addicted to their drug. Then they
Oh,
get nabbed up and they get sent to another town where there shouldn't be a homeless population. You know, this population is 60,000 people. How many homeless people? But there's more homeless people in this specific town than I've ever seen in my life. So they dump them there, and then they transport them to Alabama, and then they're auctioned off and transported wherever they've been bought.
it's horrible. Are you kidding me? That's happening in the United States of America, and we hear
And
nothing about it,
it goes high up the ladder.
of course.
So I have to be very careful with what I
Yes,
say.
yes, yes. And I don't want you incriminating yourself. So we know that we have to watch our back. So
Right.
don't say anything you shouldn't say. No slippery slopes.
But
But
I do know the who, how, and what. I know everybody involved.
oh my God, this is really, I have to tell you, as a human being who is such a humanitarian to the core, this stuff keeps me awake. I wish I
Right.
didn't know. But the problem with knowledge comes power and responsibility. Because
Right.
when you know, you cannot unknow. And I struggle a lot lately because certain faces appear on my TV screen or my computer, and I find myself, I swear to God, it's almost impulsive. I take my hands and I hold it up to cover the face, and I'm trying to find my clicker so I could swipe it off the screen. It's true. I can't even watch these people's faces. And what's interesting is before I knew what I know, there was something about those people that didn't sit right with me. So I'm
Right.
absolutely sure I have some kind of a divine gift, and my soul was telling me, there's something off with them. So, Erik, based on what you know, and we're not going to ask you to name anybody because we don't want to lose you from the planet. Um,
Right.
we don't want you dying in an overdose, heart attack, bad pool. So we're gonna avoid names. But based on what you know, what hope does humanity have for resolution in this arena?
Uh, it's it's going to take a lot of legwork, and it's going to take a lot of connecting the dots. I've spent so much time this year working on it, and I'm on my own. Like, I mean, I've got a little bit of help here and there, but for the most part, this is every piece of information is something I've collected myself. Um, I do have, my counterparts that chip in and help out sometimes, but um, they try not to expose themselves as well because they know that the dangers involved. So they throw me out there to. There, you take all the bullets. Okay, I guess I will. But
You have a bulletproof back, right?
something, something. I mean, I can't even go in the state of Kentucky right now because I've been told every cop in the state's looking for me.
The cops want to kill you, and you're trying to help them.
Like, nah, they don't think I'm trying to help them. You,
I think if
like
you
I
have a
said,
brain, you can connect the dots. I mean, you listen.
it goes up the ladder. This whole thing goes up the ladder. And no, there's no, when you look at a politician, assume he's involved.
Putin made a statement about our Democratic Party the
Putin
other
was
day,
right.
and I'm not going to repeat that here. You go do it. You go do the research yourself. But you know what? I've gained a lot of respect for Putin. I really do, because I don't think these things would happen in his country. I really
No,
don't. So he
no,
seems,
he doesn't put up with that type of stuff there.
uh,
And um, Putin is we have to remember that President Putin is an Orthodox Catholic. He's Russian Orthodox. So there's not a lot of wiggle room in the rules. It's either black or white. And so he's a president in that manner. There's no wiggle room. It's either black or white. So I prefer to be ruled like that. Like if I had a president, I want him to be either
God
straight.
conscious.
I want him to be straight up all the time. That's how presidents are supposed to be. They're supposed to look out for the best interests of the country and be straight up. President Putin does a good job of that. Everybody in Russia seems to understand what the game plan is all the time. There's no like guessing. Kind of how we had with the Biden administration and a little bit with the Trump administration, where you just don't know. Like everything's a wild card all the time, and like people can't have mental stability and get prepared for things because you don't know when the next scandal is going to be around the corner. And that's kind of the problem we have.
Well, what makes me sad is if you just pay a little bit of attention, a lot of our politicians have made a tremendous amount of money while they
Oh yeah,
have been serving in their political various affiliations, and they don't get paid the money they made. So, how have they made the money they're leaving with that they didn't earn in their roles? Okay, people can do things on the side, but we're talking huge money. And while they're making all this money, we are working and paying most of what we're making in taxes. And for the number of Americans who are working and paying the kind of taxes we pay, we shouldn't want for anything in this country. The average American should be able to live a comfortable life. But life has
right,
become harder and harder for everyone. And yet, the people who support these politicians, they seem blind to all of this. And they're up
right.
there fighting each other. It's just,
Well,
it's
that behavior
frustrating.
that behavior goes all the way down to the local levels too. I was just looking at a situation in Kentucky where it was a politician. He had basically put another lawyer in on the he put another lawyer in the courthouse and was basically not paying, or he was paying him, but the lawyer was never there. And it was basically just giving this guy a free salary. And this kind of, because it was his buddy. Now this type of stuff happens all the time. These guys are constantly skimming and scamming. And especially down in Kentucky, they just had a big round of tornadoes come through that tore up a bunch of stuff. There was a big flood there just recently. All this stuff happened within a couple months of each other. So they had a lot of disaster, aid that they needed. Houses are destroyed. So there was a lot of work. So FEMA comes down and they cut a check. And, like the mayor of the one town, he went up and set up two shell companies just so he could funnel FEMA money in there. And where these people aren't getting the help, they had over 800 properties just in the one county that were destroyed, and only 400 of them got aid. So what about the other 400? Well, they said, well, we maxed out the money. I don't believe that. I don't believe you maxed out the money for 1 minute. I believe that they got funneled over into these shell companies. And that's what these guys do. It's not just a federal problem of stealing that we have. This goes all the way down to the local levels. And you look at the state levels, they do the same thing. Special interest and lobbyists have destroyed America. And they've fed off of the greed of our politicians. And that's a big correction that's going to be real hard to break that habit and to get it out. They need to pass it into law. For one, where lobbyists need to be eliminated as a job. That needs to be a felony. It needs to be a felony if you accept money from a private interest group. Everything should have to go through a PAC. And they do when they want to hide the money. But the PAC money needs to be more transparent and clear. So we have a real political issue that goes all the way down to the local levels where everybody's looking for that way to skim money. That some of these towns they control the construction bids on stuff where they basically violate antitrust laws, and they'll tip off the bids to the construction companies they want to do them, or the road work units, and that way their buddies get all the bids all the time. I see this happen over and over and over again, and it might seem like a small potatoes, but that behavior, it, these guys, they move up into to city politics, then they move up into state politics, they move up into federal politics, and that pattern of stealing our money never stops. There
Well,
you go.
I
I'm not
always
mad. I'm
say
not mad no more.
I always say I'm a slave to the system because we are. We
Right.
work, 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 and pay taxes and more taxes and more taxes, and it's just wrong. But Erik, there's so many people like you and I, so many journalists banging our heads against the wall. Some of us, we bare our souls out there and we die. So
Yeah. I
what
mean,
is
they
the
try.
solution? What is the solution? This
That
is
that's that
not a
is
new problem. This has
so
been
that
going on for a long time.
Yeah, and that is a problem. And so when people like me and other creators, there was a journalist in this one town in Kentucky that was legit, Boston University journalism degree. She went to this small town newspaper, uncovered a whole bunch of stuff. She ended up winning a Pulitzer over her investigation. Well, then she had to get out of Kentucky because it wasn't safe for her anymore. So that's what you run into when you start exposing things and you start asking questions. Then the powers that be in these little good old boy systems, and even in the cities, they've got their good old boy systems. Then they want to retaliate, and that when you're a journalist or an independent journalist, or even if you work for a publication, you're subject to some major things happening to you because they don't want you digging into their dirt. They don't want you asking the community questions about what they're doing. And you get a lot of scrutiny. That I get attacked on a daily basis. It's I get probably a dozen death threats a day. um, it's just one of those things that comes with the territory. If you have very thin skin, don't be a journalist, or at least not an investigative journalist, because they're going to come for you, and they do. It's not something that that can be taken lightly if you're into journalism. Um, I probably should have just stuck to talking about international policies on the Republic. That's safe.
You
It would
know,
take a lot of. Go
I
ahead.
I think that at some point something has to be done about it
Right.
because it's clear that people are being murdered because they're
Right.
exposing that which is meant to remain secret and probably has been secret for centuries. Because let's face it, what we know, it's not something that's just started happening like in the Biden administration. This stuff has sort of trickled down. But
Right.
we're almost out of time. And what do you think we should table today before we wrap that I didn't bring up that you really think people should be aware of?
I mean, I think we should really pay attention to, where are things heading, and I spend a lot of time in our state politics here in Georgia. I know everybody, and even some of the Democrat ones. I just interviewed the fifth district U.S. Congress candidate, Victor Hill, the other day,
I saw him.
and and he's starting to become a friend. And I just talked to him this morning, and we have a lot of things in common. And he wants a lot of criminal justice reform. Well, some of the criminal justice reform are things that I agree with, and and a lot of what he's suggesting is are things that can translate across the aisle to the conservative side. So I'm trying to get an influence in there where I can kind of help bridge some of these gaps, and we don't have to have a giant war all the time, and we can get back to where we can focus on what is fair and just for the American people. Because at the end of the day, our lawmakers are supposed to represent their constituency. So if they're not representing the constituency, if you sit around and go, why has my congressman or my senator never sent me a poll? How does he know what I want? Well, it's because they don't care. They go in and they do what the lobbyists and the special interest groups tell them. So I think that's something that we need to be vocal as Americans with our politicians, because we've seen how effective. I know a lot of people on the left don't agree with the MAGA movement, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But when you look at that movement as a conglomerate, when Trump makes a mistake, they let him know, like, hey, your constituency is not happy with you right now. They do it to Pam Bondi. That's why Pam Bondi had to change her tune on the Epstein stuff. And because the MAGA people came together and said, nope, we elected Donald Trump to expose these things. Now get them exposed. And that's something that shows the power of the people. Whether you like MAGA or not, they have power. And it's what do we want as, right wing conservatives? They go get it. And it's not really Donald Trump that has that power. It's that movement that does. They hold the control wheels of Donald Trump. And the left doesn't really have that. And so I think when we look at things like, we need to really just pay attention to what your politicians are doing, find out if what they're pushing is something that's on your heart. If it's something you don't care about, then whatever. But if it's something you're like, whoa, I don't like what he's doing, get on the phone, call your politicians. All of them have emails. You can Google it and find their emails. Like, they take them all the time. I email politicians probably 2 or 3 times a week, telling them what I don't like. So be vocal and make them accountable. If they're not going to listen to you, like, I can't stand it. If they don't even acknowledge my email, they'll never get a vote out of me ever again. So I expect them to at least acknowledge, like, hey, we received your email. We're gonna talk about it and we'll get back with you. At least do that to me. But as far as just ignoring my emails, nope. If you're gonna ignore me, I'm gonna ignore you when you come knocking on my door for campaign money. So nice, see ya. So we need to do those things. It's our duty as Americans to make sure that we're voting in the right people, and and getting the proper representation. We pay the taxes for it, so why not get the representation we want? So that's my table spiel for the end.
Thank you, Erik. And I really would like us to do this frequently because you really do make some great points and you've researched them well. And so we should talk about this when we're not on camera. And for all those watching us, I would like to encourage you all to stop fighting with each other if you're on the left or the right and start researching the people that you are fighting for. Start digging into what is really going on that is not being reported by mainstream. You can watch Erik daily. He shares news that he has researched. A lot of times it's not general, but I will bring him on here and we can address like the general politics because lately he's been covering a lot of local politics and it may not pertain to your interest, but or you may not be interested because it might not be pertinent for where you are. But we can arrange for him to bring us weekly news updates. And I think the key to all of this is the truth. And when you get to the bottom of what's really happening, you may discover your side is the side of humanity because that's what you are. That's what we are. And in the world we're living in, there's a definite class system. And there's an upper echelon, and they live big and they make lots of money and have lots of money. And then there are those of us who work really hard and should have more money because of how much work we do, and we don't. And yet, the little that we do have is being taxed heavily. We have no medical resources, half of us. People are dying for medical care. Go take a look at Russia. And I'm not saying that we need to be like Russia, but we should at least have the basics to survive, because this country has the resources for all of us to live comfortably. So I'm just appealing to you to stop fighting against each other, hating each other because they don't see what you see. Because a lot of you are blinded by cognitive dissonance. You've chosen a side and you stick by them because they're your side, but they're really not working for you. And this is what I'm encouraging you to research. And thank you for following. Hopefully, you have gained some information and some knowledge from what we've shared that you didn't already know, or you got clarification, because you can trust what Erik is saying. And I know that I keep repeating it because it's true. And I'll try to come back next week if Erik is available to bring you another update. And thank you for continuing to watch and support my channel. It is my goal to help you in any little way that I can. Erik, your last word, and then we wrap.
I just want to send everybody off with a Tim Waltz wave, and that's it. That's it.
We'll
And a
see you
Tim Waltz
next
wave.
week, and thank you for watching.